Paragraph 1 asterisk. Experiments upon experiments. These are certainly things that scientists know how to do best. But sometimes things are bound to go wrong, and one of those times may be now. Thanks to the Joe Rogan podcast, a dangerous secret experiment by scientists has just been revealed, and things aren't looking good for the globe. According to this revelation, scientists may have just released something very dangerous into the world with no one having a clue about it. But what exactly is this about? And what makes it really deadly for the world? Join us as we explore what was released in the United States without people knowing in detail. Paragraph 2 asterisk. A terrifying revelation which scientists would prefer hidden. Imagine waking up one day to a pandemic flying around with people suffering from various health risks that may threaten life on Earth, only to find out that scientists are the cause. No arguments. Scientists are quite helpful and have taken the world from primitivity and helplessness to the advanced state we now see. Indeed, they are a breed that certainly deserves some accolades owing to the solutions they have brought to the world. However, it's sad to say that some scientists may be doing too much, thereby throwing the world at great risk. But what exactly are we talking about? Paragraph 3 asterisk. The answer takes us to the Joe Rogan Experience, a popular long-form podcast hosted by Joe Rogan, an American comedian, actor, mixed martial arts, MMA, commentator, and podcast host. Launched in December 2009, JRE has grown to become one of the world's most influential and widely listened to podcasts. Hence, if there's somewhere to go for groundbreaking revelations and not easily discussed conspiracy theories, it will be nowhere else than the Joe Rogan Show itself. With this in mind, something groundbreaking has just happened on the show. Recently, an anonymous hacker, as well as a guest on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast, has just shed light on the secret activities of scientists in recent times, causing an uproar in the public as more people come to know that scientists may be doing more harm than good to the world. But the question is this: what exactly have scientists done this time? And is our discovery of things at a late and unrepairable hour? We will find out the answers to this as we go. But how did it all begin? Paragraph 4 asterisk. The shocking revelation began in 2023 when an anonymous hacker was fortunate enough to access well-hidden scientific information questioning their motives and activities. This discovered information has sparked controversy, with many heads turning out of fear and concern about the future. Some discovered things included a truckload of documents, emails, and reports from a famous research institute in Massachusetts. From the discovered documents, a secret plan by scientists has been unveiled to release a whopping sum of 100,000 genetically engineered mice into the world for a mission that can only be described as terrifying. According to the discovered document, this new breed of mice is unlike anything seen before. They are stronger, faster, and even more skillful than the natural mice in the wild. They are certainly bound to affect the world in unimaginable ways. Paragraph 5 asterisk. But here is the difficult and confusing part. The document revealed that scientists plan to release this whopping number of mice into the world without any prior announcement or notice to the public. But what does this mean? Does this mean that people might have to wake up to a mouse invasion on a fateful day without prior notice? Perhaps that may or may not be the plan. But the discovery gets more interesting following this. The discovered document further reveals that scientists intend to release the genetically altered mice into several precise locations in North America, from which the spread will continue. But the question is, why would they even think of doing this? Certainly, these folks known for their immense intelligence would not just alter the genes of mice for fun, so let's delve into the only reasonable reason that was found. Paragraph 6 asterisk. An act against Lyme disease. As the wave of discoveries continued, more insights were soon gained into the actions of scientists from the Research Institute in Massachusetts and their motives. Accordingly, they planned to release these mice to study their behavior. These genetically modified rats were actually bred in the laboratory. Hence, it was essential to release them into a natural space to monitor their impact on the environment and observe the benefits they could present to the ecosystem, seeing that they are stronger and fitter than their natural wild counterparts. However, monitoring their behavior was not the only reason these genetically modified mice were released into the world. Paragraph 7 asterisk. The major reason these mice's genes were altered in the first place and why they were to be released into the world is that scientists intended to use them to tackle a disease attack on the state. Here we are talking about Lyme disease, which has been ravaging the state since the early 90s. For those who do not know, it is a bacterial infection caused by the bacterium Borrelia burgdorferi, transmitted to humans through the bite of infected black-legged ticks, commonly known as deer ticks. It is one of North America and Europe's most common tick-borne illnesses. It has led to numerous health issues such as neurological complications, severe arthritis, cognitive as well as psychiatric issues, and even cardiac issues, which can lead to death in the worst cases. Lyme disease can also prove to be very dangerous for pregnant women, so there is no confusion about why anyone would want to fight it. However, the question is how the mice population comes in and why scientists must create a genetically modified population to control Lyme disease. Paragraph 8 asterisk. Here is the thing. Although it is true that the primary infectors of Lyme disease are the black-legged ticks, the major carriers of the pathogens or bacteria that cause Lyme disease are the mice. Hence, it is from the mice population that Lyme disease is transmitted to the ticks, which in turn transmit the disease to other mice and humans. So, by working on the mice and altering their genetic makeup, scientists intended to bring a permanent relation to the Lyme disease spread in the state. As we already know, the genetic alterations to this breed of mice make them stronger and more fit, demonstrating different behavioral patterns and strong resistance to the pathogens that cause the disease. Because of this, scientists believe that these genetically modified mice can pause the transfusion process of Lyme disease. Hence, they progressed in their plans. Paragraph 9 asterisk. As part of their agenda, the scientific group intended to send the new set of genetically modified mice to various strategic locations. Interestingly, the first location on their list was an island without people. There, they would observe the behavior of the mice and how they interact with the environment before proceeding to the next step. Following this, they would release the new breed of mice into the island of Nantucket in great numbers, where things might get interesting. Certainly, there's a reason why this specific location was chosen. Intriguingly, since the experiment is intended to eradicate Lyme disease, the island of Nantucket was chosen because there was a huge outbreak of the disease on the island then. As a matter of fact, the fame of the disease outbreak on the island goes way back in time. To understand how serious this was, the island recorded the highest rate of disease infestation in the United States between 1993 and 2001. Like that wasn't enough, it was the third most infested place in the United States between 2002 and 2006. But here are more interesting details about the secret operation of scientists. Paragraph 10 asterisk. According to the discovered document, the idea of using genetically modified mice to solve the problem of Lyme disease was that of none other than a professor at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. After coming up with the idea, which is somewhat weird, he introduced it to the Nantucket Board of Health, and this was the beginning of the implementation of the dangerous experiment. But a little twist comes into the story at this point. It would later be discovered that while many of the island residents were unaware of the scientists' plan to introduce a population of genetically modified mice to the region, the scientists claimed to have introduced their plans to about 20 residents who had agreed to the idea and said it was okay. As reasonable as this may sound, it is clear how wrong it is for scientists to decide upon the fate of a region by simply consulting just a tiny fragment of its population. Paragraph 11 asterisk. To make things worse, the 20 residents who were said to have been consulted were said to be uneducated people who were also desperate for a solution to the Lyme disease on the island. As far as they know, the disease has harmed the region much and left them with no choice but to accept whatever scientists presented. For context, Lyme disease has stood as a major problem of the region for decades, with a surgeon from a hospital in Nantucket stating that the number of Lyme disease cases on the island is way more than what is being reported by hospitals. According to him, up to 300 cases of Lyme disease patients are handled annually. This is undoubtedly a serious and huge problem for a small county. So, we can't blame the residents for giving a nod to the appearance of a solution. The problem, however, is that scientists knew better but did not consider the challenges involved. Neither did they present them to the very few uneducated residents they consulted. So, what else do we need to know? According to the discovered document, the type of mice used for the experiment was the white-footed breed. They are said to be the primary source of Lyme disease and a major host for black-legged ticks. These ticks contract the disease from them, and the movement from here is fast, with the spread going from the tick to other mice. Now, although scientists had modified the genes of the white-footed mice, which were now resistant to the disease pathogens of Lyme disease, it was also discovered from the revealed documents that their research wasn't complete. For one, they still needed to identify the gene responsible for the resistance to the disease pathogens in the white-footed mice. With this knowledge, the discovered gene can be multiplied in other mice so that the population would be more resistant to the infection. With this aim and intention to study the white-footed mice in mind, the Massachusetts scientists believed strongly in the new experiment, convinced that the 100,000 genetically altered mice would provide them with solutions and answers. Delving more into the discovered documents, more details about that experiment remained untapped. Here, the document further revealed the plan of scientists to disseminate the mice in batches of 20,000 to 40,000 within a year. This means that within a distance of every 2.5 months, a new batch of the genetically modified mice would be released at their designated locations. According to their plan, if nothing goes wrong following the release of the mice in Nantucket, the mice would then be released to larger areas in the northern and eastern American regions. Following this line of thought, it is easy to believe that the genetically modified mice are a blessing to biomedical research, agriculture, and, by extension, the world. However, get ready for a shocker. A large portion of the public seems to disagree. ### controversy about the scientific experiment and the potential risk involved. Intriguingly, following the recent discovery of the secret activities of the scientists involved with genetically modified mice, the public has not hesitated to express their disapproval of the secret action. As it turns out, while the use of mice to fight off Lyme disease made total sense to the scientists, it didn't to the public, who pointed out that if it was truly a reasonable plan, why then was it hidden in the first place? Here, more concerns and questions continued to come up. What if the benefits of the genetically modified mice solution turn out to be less than the risk that it poses? Here, we must understand that this test is the first of its kind and is only founded on a guess and speculation of the possible outcome. From what we know, the experiment's outcome may not be in line with the plan and may end up being good or bad. That being the case, the genetically modified mice's story might not be good. However, these considerations did not stop the scientists. Still, in their right senses, they simply went ahead with the lab procedures, modifying the gene of a large mouse population through a method scientifically known as tech-clustered regularly interspaced short palindromic repeats, CRISPR. This action was the first step in introducing the mice to the world. However, people may not realize this could be the first step in unleashing big global trouble. Now here's a big revelation that nobody would like to hear. According to the guest on the Joe Rogan podcast, the scientists involved had, somewhere along the line, discovered that the genetically modified mice could do more harm to the world than the first perceived good. However, they did not rethink the idea despite this. Still, they continued blindly to the possible dangers while claiming to handle the situation. It actually gets more interesting. The unique episode of the Joe Rogan podcast, where the big revelation was made, soon made the public question the motive of the Massachusetts scientists even more as they analyzed what could possibly go wrong. Another major problem that the public has with the experiment, as the discovered documents revealed, is that it may take up to a year before the impact of the released genetically modified mice is seen. So, to break this down, the public should not expect to see any change in the spread of Lyme disease or tick population until a year or more, despite the risk involved in releasing the mice. Here it becomes clear that the mice experiment could be a guessing game and sheer show of unnecessary smartness by the scientists involved. However, the implications of their actions might be more than the possibility that this was just a sheer waste of time. There were definitely more consequences to unravel. One of the major consequences of the genetically modified mice experiment is the large population of mice that people might have to live with despite having no results on the mission to fight Lyme disease. One question which plagues people's minds is why scientists needed to unleash a plague of mice on the world for a year when they could spend the same amount of time looking for better control for Lyme disease. With all these questions coming to mind, it's kind of not so surprising that the scientists involved had hidden their agendas. Perhaps their plan was also not so smart to them, or worse still, they were ashamed of the consequences they may have unleashed on the world. Moreover, following the revelation of their activities to the public, the scientists involved have attempted an explanation, stating that the test was intended to be conducted in unpopulated locations before the island and then the state. As such, people might not have to bear the brunt of living with a large mouse population for up to a year. But how soothing is this explanation? This explanation would sound far from soothing when we consider the more serious problems that the dangerous experiment poses. Unfortunately, according to biologists, the sad truth is that instead of reducing Lyme disease in the long run, genetically modified mice may cause more health risks to the world. Here, even more sad is the possibility of the scientists involved knowing this and deciding to hide the whole truth. Now it gets more complicated. The guest on the Joe Rogan podcast also revealed that biologists have observed that genetically modified mice are a bad model that may produce unexpected results. However, he explains that his greatest shock is that the culprit scientists are playing games with journalists so the truth won't be revealed. So, let's explore this mysterious truth and how terrible it is. According to biologists, the biologically modified mice might carry worse diseases than the originally feared Lyme disease. As terrifying as this sounds, this is not a joke. Here, biologists explain that although the mice's influenced resistance to the pathogens responsible for Lyme disease may lead to a little result, such as actually eradicating the disease, the new state of things might be the birth of a new outbreak of worse diseases that may even terminate both wild and human life on Earth. Sadly, this is possible for many reasons. First of all, we must consider the outrageous increase in the mouse population, which only means that whatever new disease they carry will spread fast and might be impossible to deal with on time. But that is not all, as the new release of genetically altered mice to the world might cause our ecosystem to suffer. Sadly, biologists have made it known that the new addition of genetically modified mice will also impact the environment and how it functions. The reason for this is that since these new breeds of mice are stronger than natural wild mice, it would leave the natural wild mice at a disadvantage. Thanks to their enhanced abilities, the genetically modified mice will also reproduce faster, doubling their population quickly. As interesting as this sounds, it is bad news because it would create an imbalance between the population of the natural wild mice and the genetically modified ones. This imbalance will lead to unhealthy competition in which the winner can be determined from the beginning since the genetically modified mice are much stronger than the natural ones. In the end, we might have a globe filled with genetically modified mice, which can spread new diseases faster. But it gets worse. According to biologists, resistance or introducing genetically modified mice into the mouse population would also disrupt the existing food chain in our ecosystem. This is because the genetically modified mice demonstrate enhanced abilities, one of which includes their hunting potential. Hence, because these genetically modified mice would be so good at hunting, there may be a problem with overhunting. Overhunting is a problem because, through it, the genetically modified mice may run down their prey population in no time. And by the time their prey goes extinct, new problems may come up, such as their invasion of homes and public places like schools. This, in turn, would lead to an increase in human and mouse interaction, and the repercussion of this would be the increased transmission rate of diseases. Sadly, as we look into what the future may hold for the world and this new breed of mice, it is clear that the core reason for their creation might be defeated eventually. Even if the control of diseases and pathogens may have worked in the laboratory, it is clear that things are not the same in the wild where these mice would be released. It is true that the scientists involved claimed that all the mice used for the experiments were from one source and were given the same treatment. Hence, they would possibly respond to treatment in the same way. However, another concern that comes to mind at this point is the different changes that these mice would experience when they are exposed to different conditions in the wild. This might end up multiplying the problem and may lead to the demand for more than one solution to a problem caused by a single or similar set of actions. Here, there is a possibility that while the genetically modified mice may resist disease pathogens in the laboratory, things may be different in the wild as pathogens in the wild may respond differently. Here, it is possible that if pathogens in the wild can't infect the genetically modified mice, it may move its focus to other species, lead to a new outbreak, or maintain the old one through a different channel. But the problem doesn't end there. Another possible outcome that the release of genetically modified mice may generate is the problem of virulent strains. But what does this mean? A virulent strain refers to a specific form or variant of a pathogen such as a virus, bacterium, or fungus, that has an enhanced ability to cause disease or damage in a host organism. Virulent strains tend to be more harmful, aggressive, or infectious compared to less virulent strains of the same species. These strains often produce toxins or evade the immune system more effectively, leading to more severe symptoms in the infected host. In the case of the genetically modified mice, virulent strains may happen in that the ability of the genetically modified mice to resist diseases might mount selective pressure on pathogens. Sadly, because of this pressure, the pathogens can double up and return stronger. Hence, with this evolution, we can say that the process involved in creating virulent strains has occurred. The emergence of virulent strains can be so powerful that it can lead to the outbreak of diseases that can desolate wildlife and the human population. News flash: the virulent strains can even unlock new levels of incurable diseases that the world has no clue about. Now relax, because the bad news isn't over yet. According to biologists, another significant risk is involved in introducing biologically modified mice to the world. Here, the danger is that animals cannot really differentiate between themselves. Hence, they wouldn't know which mice are genetically modified and which are natural. As a result, they might end up interbreeding, which may lead to the mix-up of genes in the mice population. When interbreeding happens, the modified gene of the genetically modified mice is, therefore, introduced to the genetic pool of the mice population, leading to what is regarded as genetic contamination. Sadly, the effect of this remains unpredictable. On one hand, it may lead to the emergence of hybrid species of mice with unknown behaviors and ecological roles. In the long run, the experiment may eventually lead to confusion and the loss of the original gene of natural wild mice. The new mice breed may be worse than anything we can imagine. However, even within the realms of our imagination, things can still be as bad as these mice growing into mutant creatures like the ones we see on TV. It might not be that bad, but there's no telling what to expect, as these mice can become anything since they can grow faster and even bigger. Ultimately, the sad truth is that our planet can become a totally chaotic scene which no one wants. The revelation aftermath. Certainly, the revelation that the discovered document has bestowed upon the public is quite huge, especially considering the consequences of the weird scientific experiment. These consequences have caused a stir among the public and have led to a global discussion on the matter, with questions flying around. One of these questions surfaced in Joe Rogan's experience and was asked by no one other than Joe Rogan himself. Here, Joe Rogan could not help but wonder if the scientists were not aware of the consequences of their actions. Interestingly, the guest on the show answered this question and described the situation as nothing but a general systemic failure of reason. Undoubtedly, the scientists involved may have not fully known the repercussions of their actions. However, they had an idea of some of the consequences but sadly chose to ignore them and even hide them from the public. Unfortunately, despite knowing about the possible consequences of their plan, they chose to focus on the short-term effects it would have without focusing on long-term results, which can affect the ecosystem and impact the planet as we know it. The secrecy of the experiment is the most distasteful part of it all. Regardless of their motives, the scientists involved have proven to be undoubtedly guilty of a lack of transparency, which is a problem in itself. In fact, more than a problem, the action is regarded in the scientific ecosystem as a major breach of ethical standards. Their actions have, therefore, led to a great controversy regardless of their motive, and the reason for this is not surprising. We must understand that the public has the right to know what scientists are doing. In fact, every scientific research project, especially when it involves genetic modifications and the introduction of new species to the globe, should be transparent and require public approval before it is executed. The public has the right to know the actions of scientists because they impact the environment and their overall health. We must also understand that it is wrong for scientific experiments to continue if the risk involved is greater than the positive result. Sadly, the scientists involved in the mice's genetic modifications are at fault. Here, their goal to cure Lyme disease can be achieved through safer means such as vaccines, which are much more effective. However, the scientists involved chose to gamble with the public's lives, which is wrong. Now, this is just one bad story associated with scientific activities on genetic modification. Actually, we must admit that the knowledge of genetic modification is a good one. It has also done well in biological science and has placed the world at an advantage in many ways. For example, it has provided numerous opportunities for advancements in medicine, agriculture, and our environment in general. However, we must note that there are also risks involved with experiments like this. Hence, public preparation and ethical considerations are non-negotiable when conducting these experiments, as they involve the lives of both people and wildlife. So, what about the experiment with the genetically modified mice? The truth here is that it remains unknown whether the scientists involved had actually carried out the experiment according to what was planned in the discovered documents. According to the documents, after monitoring and ensuring their safety, the agenda was to release the genetically modified mice to different locations between 2020 and 2023, from uninhabited regions to inhabited ones. As for now, no one knows if all of this was done and where the scientist had actually stopped. As a matter of fact, there is still no proof that the experiment was actually carried out in the first place. Hence, until the truth is discovered, this controversy will remain. So, what do you think about the genetically modified mouse experiment? Was it a bad idea as we think? Let us know in the comments section below. If you enjoyed the video, like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Also, click the following video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.